Episode 255, the Kentucky Derby edition of the HHH Racing Podcast is brought to you by Hawthorne Racecourse, Chicagoland's hometown track, and by the Adelphi Racing Club.
Adelphi Racing Club, offering a truly personal racing experience. Looking to own thoroughbred racehorses and win at the highest level circuits? We're not just a syndicate, and our members aren't just investors. We are partners. Experience the Adelphi difference. Join the club today. Contact us to get a taste of the Adelphi experience and come hang with us this Saratoga meet.
And now let's start episode 255, the Kentucky Derby edition of the HHH Racing Podcast.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hello, horse racing fans, and welcome to episode 255 of the HHH Racing Podcast. It is Kentucky Derby podcast time. Thanks for joining us so much. We have an unbelievable show for you. I'm wearing my red, the Run for the Roses, the first Saturday in May. This is going to be a fantastic podcast. We're going to not only preview the Kentucky Derby, but also the Pick 5 that ends in the Kentucky Derby. And we have two fantastic guests coming on early in the show. We are going to have the Dorman family. That's right, the famous Dorman family, made famous by the wonderful horse Cody's Wish. They will be here live in just a few minutes to talk about Cody's Wish and their journey. Cody's Wish is running this Saturday in the Churchill Downs handicap. We're very excited to wish them a fantastic journey this Saturday. And then later, Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse will be here to help us get through the preview for the Kentucky Derby race itself. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. We greatly appreciate it. It helps the channel immensely. Also, smash that thumbs up button, that like button. That will tell the YouTube algorithm this is a great show. It will send people to this podcast and all the other previous 254 podcasts here on the HHH Racing Podcast. We greatly appreciate if you can smash that like button, and then also hit the notification bell so that you know when new content will be loaded up on the channel and you don't have to check back and look at it. You can follow me at HKravitz on Twitter. I'm going to be at the Derby for the first time this year. I'll be sending out a lot of pictures and videos on Twitter. Please follow me at HKravitz. And then, of course, scrolling on the bottom, you can reach me through email, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. We have a show tonight at 9 o'clock. The Bettin and Boozin boys will be on here at 9 o'clock Eastern to talk about the very interesting two-day Pick 6. It's a $1 base bet. It's one of the great horizontal bets they have this weekend at Churchill Downs. So join the Bettin and Boozin boys tonight, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, as they go through the two-day Pick 6. And then tomorrow night, as you see on the screen, 8 p.m. Eastern, almost everyone that's a part of the HHH Racing Podcast, almost all the hosts will be here for our Kentucky Derby Roundtable. It'll be about a 45-minute discussion from 8 to 8:45 Eastern Standard Time, plus guest and BCBC champion Matt Miller will be joining us with his opinions on the Kentucky Derby and how to bet some of the races this weekend. We have you guys covered like a glove. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. The Power Picks, look below the video player for all the information. We have an 8 to 9 page tip sheet for the Oaks and the Derby. Are you ready for this? $4 total. We are not raising the price. It's $4 every weekend, $16 for an entire month. But for this weekend only, $4 is you subscribe to the Power Picks. Look below the video player for full breakout coverage of horizontal bets, vertical bets, spot plays, price plays, grids, everything you want for the Oaks and Derby Day card. Look below the video player for information. And then we have a great website as well, hhhracingpodcast.com, created and run by our co-host, Pete Visco, who does a great job. Wow, we have so many people, but I'll tell you what, as I'm going to wait to bring on our comments. We have a lot of people joining. We'll bring on our comments right after we bring on my fantastic co-hosts who've been with me all week doing yeoman's work, doing a lot of work on the side and enjoying every minute of it to be with you as we're going to discuss the Kentucky Derby and the late pick 5 that ends the Derby. First, let's bring on from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Grade 1 gamble winning champion, soon to be author of a book. If you're not aware, we'll be talking about that. And also a journalist for the Saratoga Special. It's Paul Halloran. And from the East Coast of Maryland, the author of our wonderful HHH Racing Podcast website, Mr. Pete Visco. Guys, we got to go with the red theme with the fonts and the shirt and everything. It's Derby time, baby. Let's go. I am pumped.
Yeah, doesn't get any better than this, huh? What do you got there, Paul? There we go.
Thrilling. Boy, absolutely. I love it, Paul. And Paul, he's got a very appropriate hat. I can see what you're talking about here in just a minute. Real quick, before we talk about our special guest and get into the races, well, let's look at some comments, guys. And it's the first time I'm looking at them. Wow. The comment is low. We got Michael Austin is here. We got Simon O'Neill, who I believe is from the UK. Simon O'Neill was on the show last night in the chat for Bettin and Boozin. So Simon, thanks for joining the show. We got Richard Avalar, who's got a lot of Rich Strike love with the red theme. Wants to know why Rich Strike is 7-2. Maybe Paul Halloran has an opinion on that. Richard Avalar is here, guys. He loves Cody Wish. He bet in the Breeders' Cup. Richard will be talking about Cody's Wish. Penn State.
How'd that work out for him?
I think it worked out pretty damn well. Penn State Scott is here. We've got Philippe Peltier, I believe would be pronounced. Bonjour from Montreal. Looking forward for a great show. Go Cody's Wish. Philippe, thanks for joining the show. Truth Exposed. Good grief. Not sure what that's about, but I guess we'll find out. We got Voshan Welsh from Barbados. All over the world, guys, are joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Voshan, for joining the show. Whoa, this is breaking news. Matt Miller, he wasn't going to be here tonight. He texted me, but no. Canceled dinner plans. Just be here for the live show. Review of the race will be great, but I'm really here for the special guests. Great intimate setting for this. Thank you, Matt Miller. Two other ones really quick. We've got, Christine Race. So glad I got here in time tonight. Been looking forward to these days for quite a while. Thanks, Christine. We got B Mac is here. We've got, a lot of people in the chat. If you are watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Twitter, highly recommend you switch over to YouTube so you can join our live chat. But we're very happy to have you wherever and whenever you are listening and watching tonight. Guys, before we bring on our special guest who's going to be with us in a few minutes, Pete, I'm going to go to you first. What does Derby Week mean to you? Do you have any special memories of the week in general? Is this something, obviously, you look at your calendar, any special preparations mentally, physically, just in general, talk about your excitement and your fond memories of Derby Week in general.
Yeah, I wouldn't say memories of the week necessarily, but I think it's the only between probably the Derby and the Breeders' Cup, I would say, are the two where it just gets you excited a little early. So you start handicapping early. I know there's always a lot of the huffing and puffing on Twitter about why would you handicap a race this far in advance? Because it's fun. I mean, this is a race we all love. I don't care if it's the one that brings out all the people who aren't into horses, and who cares about all that. It's fun. It gets people energized about horse racing. It's always a great race. It's a fun betting race because you get big payouts. So the excitement builds as the week goes on. And actually, my son and I seem to have a new tradition on Friday of the Oaks. We seem to go to the movies now every Friday based on because something always debuts, some big movie debuts. So the last couple I've watched in the theater on my phone, the Kentucky Oaks, and last year's I was pissed and was ready to throw my phone at the screen when Secret Oath won. But hopefully this year will be a little better.
For sure. By the way, Simon O'Neill, Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, it's midnight, right? It's 12:12
Nice.
in London. Listen, there's no sleeping this week, Paul. This is Derby week. You got to be cranked up and ready to go. Paul, just any thoughts about Derby week in general? Any memories you've had of Derby week? Anything interesting during the week, or just your thoughts in general leading up to this weekend?
Yeah, I just like it because of the lead up, and I think Pete hinted at it. It's once the calendar turns. Those of us who live in miserable weather, I know you do too, Howard. Once the calendar turns, once the Derby preps start, that's kind of we start looking ahead to better days than the dog days of winter. So, once those Florida races come on the schedule, and it's a lot of work for 2 minutes, and sometimes, like last year, you feel like, boy, that was a lot of work for my favorite part of the montage in the beginning is Howard's expression. But it really is to watch the preps and to have an ongoing opinion. And I've watched the workout show, I think, every day. I missed it today because I was at the airport, which was a good reason to miss it. Actually, if I had thought of it, I could have watched it there. But just to see them on the track, I will be doing that live tomorrow. I'm very, very pleased about that.
We saw Barrett. You are already in Louisville right now as we speak.
Yes, I'm coming to you live from Indiana, actually, but I have made my maiden voyage over to the Downs. I went over today to pick up my credential, watched a few races. I actually hit one from the hotel and none while I was there, but I'm still going to go back.
Okay, I know the weather's going to be beautiful the next few days.
Well, it was great today.
The weekend
great
is
today.
50-50, but it won't be like a complete washout even if it rains. It's going to be great. And Paul, can you talk about what you have there on below your tag? On your name, below your name there.
Yes, today is Cody's Wish's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
May
Cody.
3rd.
Happy birthday.
May 3rd, 2018, about 5 months before he met his best friend, Cody, which we'll talk about shortly.
Man, I mean, that's just that's awesome. And Cody's Wish is running, of course, this Saturday. We're about to talk to the Dorman family in just a minute here, guys. My first Derby, I talked about this when I explained the My Story video. That I can remember. Again, I was sort of a late bloomer. No one in my family was really involved with horse racing. I remember 89. I really remember 1990 with Unbridled and Francis Genter, one of the most famous moments in Kentucky Derby history when Carl Nafsker, who was a great trainer and trained at Arlington as well in my younger days, turns to Francis Genter and said, you've won the Derby. And it was just emotional. It was great. I was graduating high school that year, and I just remember it very well. There's been a lot of really memorable Derbies. Again, Paul, we're going to have the Dormans on, I guess, any minute, correct? So
7:15 is what I asked them for, and they are typically pretty good.
Terrific.
And I did, Howard, I should say I did hear from Ray Lou this morning. He apologized profusely. He was at a dinner last night with a bunch of people, tried to break away a few times and was not successful. He apologizes profusely. I told him, we're still going to bet you in the Oaks anyway.
Yeah, you should have told him we're rooting against him now. Come on, Paul.
Negative.
Tell him he's out. Tell him he's out now.
I'm playing that with us, Pete.
Again, we have a lot of people watching, folks. We're going to be waiting just another, a minute or two here for the Dorman family, and then we're going to be talking about the Pick 5, and of course, we're going to talk about the Kentucky Derby as well. Those of you that are watching and in the comments live, please comment in the chat right now. What was the first Kentucky Derby you remember? Or maybe the first Kentucky Derby that you bet. Please comment in the live chat. We'd love to hear. We always have a wide variety, guys, of ages. Paul, keep going doing your thing if you want to contact them. Pete and I can talk for a bit.
Nope, we're good.
But we have a very wide variety of ages and handicapping abilities. We've got, teenagers watching the show. We've got people in there, who knows what, watching the show. Pete, do you remember your first Derby? Maybe that you didn't bet, but that you were watching on TV about the year or the horse that won that race?
I don't remember. I don't have a good memory for historical things like that. So I fall short when it comes to that. The one I do remember, which sucked mostly, was Easy Goer Sunday Silence, because Easy Goer is my all-time favorite. He was my favorite at the time. I hate Sunday Silence. So that was brutal. So that's one that always sort of sticks in my head. I mean, I remember one of the it happened more recently is American Pharaoh. I mean, I didn't have a Triple Crown winner that I remembered. So to see the first one was fantastic.
Sorry, Peter, I want to interrupt. We have the Dormans are in the green room ready to go. Dormans, if you could hear me, just give me a little thumbs up for me. Wonderful. They are ready. It looks like they're both pretty much in the camera there. They'll work out the camera situation. And there we go. That looks pretty good. That's good enough, guys. Maybe it's a little, there we go. It's a little closer together. All right, Paul, I would be remiss. There's no way I can introduce these wonderful people. Paul Halloran, please introduce the people we're about to bring on.
Well, we are going to meet Lesly and Kelley Dorman, parents of Cody. I think everyone's aware of the Cody's Wish story by now. If you're not, stay tuned. But I had the good fortune of speaking to them the first time about 2 days after the Forego, when Cody's Wish beat a horse called Jackie's Warrior at Saratoga, when no one thought he could win except young Cody, who did predict it. And we've since become friends. I'm happy to say, spent a lot of time with them a few weeks ago in Keeneland when you were down there, Howard. And I think you had a chance to meet Kelley as well, and little Kylie.
And Kylie,
so,
yep.
And we will see them Saturday. So without further ado.
How you doing, guys?
Let's bring on, here they are, Kelley Dorman and Lesly Dorman. Hi, guys. Welcome to Derby Week, or should we call it Cody's Wish Week? How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you?
Terrific. Thank you so much, Kelley and Lesly, for joining us. Well, they're going to be on for about 10 or 15 minutes, just very quickly. Paul, I'm going to let you run most of these, the interview here, but just Kelley and Lesly, on behalf of all the viewers and fans of the HHH Racing Podcast, we really appreciate the time. I know you're very much in demand these days, especially with interviews and whatnot. And I also want to say publicly, Kelley, it was a pleasure to meet yourself and your daughter at Keeneland. It was really wonderful. I look forward to possibly seeing you again this weekend, although there's about 140,000 people I'm going to have to fight through. But Paul, go ahead and you can ask a few questions, and then Pete and I will jump in as well.
Well, I think this is how we're breaking news here, because Kelley is on all the time, but this is a rare appearance by the brains of the operation, Mrs. Dorman. So I think we want to talk to her first, because Mr. Dorman gets plenty of airtime, and Lesly, this is a great thing for us to get her. So Lesly, tell us about the preparations for Saturday.
Oh, we've got our clothes all ready. We've had a suit for a while now. Mm-hmm. And just getting everybody ready.
Has Cody given his prediction yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
He's gonna like everyone wait. The anticipation is there. And by the way, I just bought a suit as well, just for the Derby itself. No, it's not like a red suit. I was thinking about it, but I'm like, you know what? I want to buy a suit, Paul, that's gonna be practical, that I can wear other days, just the Kentucky Derby. So yeah, everyone's got the new digs. Kelley, you got any new digs? You bring out a new tie or anything interesting, or just going with what you got?
I'm gonna mix and match with some of the stuff I've got. Actually wearing a tie I've never worn before, so game day. It's a lot of game day decision when I. So
there you go, Paul.
I had to lug 2 sport jackets down here all the way from Boston, for Christ's sakes, for Friday and Saturday. 2 different ones, I might add. I'll be wearing Godolphin blue on Saturday.
Paul, by the way, Paul, if anyone has any questions, we have a lot of people watching. I don't know how many questions we'll be able to get to from our great fans in the live chat. If you have any questions for Kelley or Lesly, Dorman. Again, they're the parents of Cody Dorman, of Cody's Wishes fame. Please put them in the chat. We'll try to put out as much as possible. Paul, go ahead.
So, guys, you and I, we have talked about this a million times, but for the benefit of the people who are meeting you for the first time, tell them all what this horse has meant to Cody and what this story has meant to your family.
Go ahead. No, it's your time.
A lot. He has really changed Cody as far as what he does in therapy, in life in general. There's been a huge difference in Cody. Cody's doing things that we didn't think he would be doing, and his motivation has come from the horse.
Yeah, he's just he's done better in school. He's working on writing. He actually made him a birthday card, our birthday sign today, which that seems to motivate the horse.
Do we have the sign? Oh, I don't know if we. Let's see.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll send it to Paul.
Okay. By the way, Dormans, there's going to be some comments on the screen. If you see on the bottom of the screen, we're going to progressively put some comments up as well. Raymond Cromley joins the show. Wants to know, do you know Cody Wish's favorite snack, the horse? Does the horse like to snack on anything that you're aware of?
He likes birthday cake. We do know that.
Well, of course. Who doesn't?
I mean, who doesn't? Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
That sounds right?
Oh, Cody's actually fed him carrots out of his own hand and stuff. That's pretty neat,
Wow,
But
that's awesome.
Yeah, back at Christmas, we got a pretty good sized box of the old fashioned sugar sticks, the peppermint sticks, the good ones. And Cody made him a Christmas card, and they sent it to Payson Park in Florida. And I actually put a little note in there to because I didn't know how much of that stuff he could have, 'cause he's still in training. And I told him to share with his buddies when he got down there. But when we got pictures back, I think he pretty much done the whole box. Yeah.
Paul, go ahead.
So, again, for the benefit of those who don't know the story, this started 5 years ago through a Make-A-Wish. You guys were on a Keeneland Make-A-Wish Ambassador Day. But maybe, guys, you could just share a little bit of another thing we've talked about and what type of role Cody's Wish played with Cody when it was during COVID, when we were all depressed, but, he was especially affected, and how a second visit to Cody's Wish really helped him.
Yeah, just leading up to that, the second visit, there was probably almost a 2-year gap, give or take. But he had dealt with a lot of adversity that he it was just he lost his grandfather, and actually a month and a half after he met Cody's Wish, he had that blood vessel burst in his stomach. So we had a lot of that stuff going on. And then right on the tail end of that, when we thought we were seeing a little light in the end of the tunnel, here come COVID. So, I guess it just snowballed, and, he got to be really depressed. And out of everything that we've dealt with him, that was probably the hardest thing I think we've ever watched him go through, because he's always had this fight, this light. You just knew in the back of your mind he was going to pull through whatever, but he just started slipping a little bit, and we started doing things, been a lot more active to try to pull him out of it, help him in any way. And you called Mary, didn't you? Mary Bourne at Gainesboro. And luckily, he was still in Lexington training, and we just wanted to know if we could take him up to see him. They had named him by then, and Cody was excited about it, but he hadn't started racing yet. So they were glad to do it and set it up. And long story short, we drove up I-75 with one kid, and seemed like we come back with another one. I mean, it was almost instantaneous, wasn't it?
Day and night.
And I was a little concerned, they wouldn't get that interaction. The first time they met, I kind of thought, well, maybe it was just a foal's curiosity, and but it was neat, and all that stuff. So I didn't know whether they would react, or the horse would even remember him. And Johnny Burke brought him out of the barn, and here he is, a big strapping two-year-old now, and he was full of vigor. They said we wouldn't get close to him that day, but he came out of the barn. He never acted aggressive. Never once laid his ears back. I don't even think he really noticed anybody around other than Cody, did he?
No.
And he went right up to him again and kind of put his nose down in his lap again. Cody actually got to rub him on the nose, and it done wonders for him. Cody actually started laughing out loud that day, that little kind of deep belly laugh, and we hadn't heard him do that very often. So
I was wondering, you talked about if I could ask a question, Paul, I was wondering when Cody's in the car and he knows he's going to watch Cody's Wish, do you see him change? Does he laugh more? Is he more upbeat, more positive? Do you see a change in him just on the ride to the track and when he's at the track?
Yes, especially coming home.
After he wins, especially, right? He probably doesn't even care if he wins or not, but
knock on wood and cross your fingers and all that. He's never seen him lose in person. So.
Wow. Well, and he's going to, again, just so everyone, he's going to be there this Saturday, right? So Cody's Wish, for all you bettors out there, is a stone cold lock single. Will win for sure because of these wonderful people on the bottom of the screen and their son. Paul and Pete, just go to the bank. I mean, it's a given, right?
It's a stat of the day, Pete. You can put that in your stats of the day.
That's the only stat that matters, right? That's a stone cold lock. We just got to get the number. I just need the number of how many times, and then
Pete,
then
two
we'll
for two. Cody's Wish.
Four for
four. All right, we'll put it on the sheet for sure.
If I'm correct, right? The maiden win, the allowance win, 4 times, right, Kelley?
4. So we're saying that. Yeah. The Hampshire, he won it. Then the dirt mile. Yeah, I think it is.
On the bottom of the screen, Kelley and Lesly is one of our wonderful fans and viewers, Brad Anderson. Easy to see that Cody gets his strength from both of you. Just an outstanding job of being parents to a very special boy. Enjoy the Derby on Saturday. Thanks, Brad. That's very sweet of you. Paul, we just got another minute or two with the Dormans. Why don't you go and ask another question or two, and then we'll let them go.
And just to wrap up, we talked about that meeting, but I think probably as we've talked, guys, the most special meeting was 3 days before the Breeders' Cup when everyone's got their game face on. There was a chance for you guys to visit Cody's Wish at Keeneland. Tell our viewers and listeners about that scene and how powerful it was.
You tell it better.
She's telling.
He's better.
Yeah, we actually had a little bit more of a crowd that time. Usually it's not very many people around when they're one-on-one together and stuff. So we were a little concerned. I was hoping they could catch some of their interactions on camera and let people see it kind of more so than what we can catch with our phones and stuff. But I was concerned that he wouldn't do anything with more going on. There was probably 15, 20 people around,
Yeah.
There were cameras and stuff, but he came out, Bill Mott brought him out, and he actually stood there and looked around for probably a couple minutes, and I thought, well, he's not really going to do anything. And I guess if a horse can shrug his shoulders and say, oh, well, that's kind of what he done. And he looked down at Cody, and he stuck his nose right in his lap. And everybody was off to our right. We were, directly behind Cody, in his chair. So they didn't catch exactly what we seen, but he raised up, and it seemed like 10 seconds or so they were like face to face, like they were saying something to each other, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
they? And then they just stared at each other there for a brief moment. And then in Cody's Wish, I actually leaned back toward Cody and took his nose and rubbed it up and down Cody's cheek.
That's awesome.
Wow.
she fell apart. I did. Yeah, you know that one was somewhat quite a bit different than normal, and I actually tried to turn around, walked off a minute, just try to get it back together, and turn back around to go back to him. I look up and everybody there was the way I was. So it was.
Well, Kelley and Lesly, I have two really quick questions to let you go. Number one, how does it feel to have a book in the process of being written? And Paul Halloran, as you guys know, is just a fantastic guy. You guys are so lucky to have someone that's so respected in the business and just a great person as Paul Halloran to be writing a book about Cody's wish and your family. So number one is, how does it feel to have a book that's going to be written about Cody's wish? And then my last thing I'd like to ask you is, or request is, tell everyone what your son, he's got a big event coming up that's very exciting that a lot of teenagers are always looking forward to. So first, your thoughts about the book being written and then the event coming up for Cody, and we'll end it right there.
It's your turn.
It's very exciting. I'm anxious to, when we get to the end and see it all. Paul has been
Me too.
Paul has worked so hard, and he's been so good to work with. So we are very excited and can't wait.
It's Paul's made this whole process easier and very interesting. He's worked his tail off. And Paul, we thank you again. I know we do it every time we talk, but I want everybody to know how much we appreciate that and what all you've done, and just there's so many behind the scenes stories, the little nooks and crannies that you're even digging around in, and that's really special, hearing people's thoughts and things like that, and just looking forward to what lies in the next chapter, I guess.
Nice.
Well, your son has got a little next chapter coming up. Tell everyone very quickly what's happening.
Actually, it was last weekend. It was.
Oh, I apologize. It was last weekend. Yeah. Tell everyone what happened last weekend.
He went to the prom, to his junior prom.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's amazing, and I'm sure he enjoyed it. Any quick tidbits? Anything a little you want to talk about very briefly? His thoughts on it?
Yeah, that was. He laughed all day. He had a phenomenal day.
Wow.
He was just so relaxed and happy, and he asked his therapist to go to the prom with him. And a good friend of ours had her dad had a 55 Chevy Bel Air, and mint condition.
Wow.
So he rolled up to the prom with that. And the guys here at the car club here at our town we live in, they brought probably 15, 20 classic cars, and they all rolled in, and it just took a little convoy to the prom. And you should have seen some of those kids' faces when we started rolling in. You seen the phones coming out and stuff. So he had a great day. It was phenomenal. A huge milestone for him.
Yeah, that's great.
Well,
listen, Kelley and Lesly, we again really appreciate you taking the time to come on. We hope to have you back again on the show, and please spread the word about the HHH Racing podcast. Hopefully, I'll have a chance, Lesly, to meet you and Cody on this weekend. I'll talk to Paul. We'll see if we can work that out. Thanks again, and good luck to Cody's wish on Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you Saturday.
Bye.
All right. Kelley and Lesly Dorman, Paul, they're blessed to have you, but you know what? You're blessed to have them as well.
I got to tell you, Howard, I know a little bit about special needs parents. It's an area that I know a little bit about. And these two are just unbelievable. I could just go on all night. Every kid is different, and, my daughter's different from their son, who's different from someone else's daughter, but for what they really have dealt with and deal with on an everyday basis. And as you can see, with a smile, we've talked a lot about, do you ever have those woe is me moments? Like, why the heck did we get picked for this? And
of course,
when they say no, you really believe them. And, I've had a chance to really get pretty deep into that with them. And, as I said to them, there's a reason why they were picked to be Cody's parents. You know, they
No
were
question.
really up for the job. So
Tris Smith said
that was
Cody's
great.
Wish is such an amazing story for racing. Looks, we could do a whole 2-hour show on Cody's Wish and the Dormans, but we're going to move on to the pick 5 and the Kentucky Derby. We wish them luck. He's going to be tough to beat, the horse, for sure, on Saturday. And Paul, I'll talk to you off air. I'd love to be able to chance to meet Leslie and Cody as well. Let's get to the pick 5, guys. Pick 5. The pick 5 Derby Day is always a great bet. And in looking at this Derby Day pick 5 that ends the Derby compared to the Oaks Day, I thought the Oaks card on Friday early before the pick 5 is absolutely impossible. But I thought the pick 5 of Oaks Day, because of 2 possible singles, you don't have to spend a lot of money. The Derby Day card Saturday, I feel the opposite. I think early, and I've handicapped all 27 races because I'm a sicko already. The early part of the card on Derby Day, guys, I thought could be very formful and chalky and not real creative, but the late pick 5, or the pick 5 that ends in the Derby, guys, starting here in race 8, is absolutely phenomenal. Let's go ahead and bring up our picks right here. There you see our picks scrolling on the bottom of the screen. The all stakes pick 5 that ends in the Kentucky Derby starts the race 8, the Pat Day Mile, about 2:46 Eastern. It's a big field, as usual, for this race. It's a field of 14. Wow. Going a mile in the dirt, 3-year-olds. Morning favorite is the number 5. Echo again for Asmussen and Drew. Pete, we're going to have you go first. Obviously, people see the screen. They're all over the place. You're going with the 9, General Jim for Shubham Gehi and Louis Saez.
Yeah, I remember. I can't remember what race he scratched out of last time, but I sort of liked him in that race a little bit as well. So it's been a while, he's off for a little bit, but coming back, I'm just looking for a horse. And I think he might be one that just is on the upswing. I mean, you see, he was an $850,000 purchase. So he was well thought of coming out of the gate before he even started. And then if you look, when he came out in that first race on New Year's Day in the Mucho Macho Man, if you watch the race, and again, we don't have to get into it here, he was definitely blocked and he just couldn't get through. And then finally at the end, when he had a little bit of room, it was a little too late at that point. So I think he could have won that race for sure if he gets through. And then if you're talking about that, and then you bump it up to the Swale where he comes out and he beats Super Chow, who's a pretty good horse. And then he pops that 90 buyer. I'm thinking, okay, this one might really be on the upswing and he might be coming into his own. He's got Saez, who I love. I actually had crazy stat for Shug. 3-year-old graded stakes on dirt, 12 for 24 wins, 19 for 24 in the money. And then when you bring that just down to 3-year-old male graded stakes on dirt, 9 for 13 wins, 12 for 13 in the money. So Shug doesn't have a ton of them, but when he has them, he gets them ready. And there was like maybe 4 or 5 horses, but they're always ready. They always run. And I think this one's on the upswing with our guy Luis in the saddle.
Well, you know what I do like about this horse and the connections is they didn't get the Derby fever, Pete. They realize he's a sprinter. They're going to keep him at one turn. They didn't get crazy with him. And, they've rested him for this spot. I just like when connections are realistic, Pete, because we see every year. There's just a bunch of horses that frankly should not be in the Derby this year.
Well, we always say that they
should be in this race, and General Jim is in this race.
And they sort of suck the life out of them sometimes, where they try so hard and they don't reach their potential, and you don't know if it's like a confidence thing or whatever it is. But I think this one could hopefully just stay at this, stay sprinting, stay one turn, and we could see him down the road in those kind of races.
I have that horse nowhere. I'll talk about my feelings on General Jim in a minute. Paul's got a third. Paul, you're going with a price, and look, it's hard to blame anyone to go with a price in this race. You're going with Curly Jack for all the fans out there that named Jack. Love your pick. 12-1 morning line. Amos is very underrated. This is a turnback. I'm a huge fan of turnbacks. I think this horse is a bit interesting. I'm actually using him in my pick 5.
Howard, I have thought very lowly of this horse throughout the year, to be honest with you. And I'm looking at this race on the plane today to start the pick 5. And I asked if they could open the door so I could jump, and they wouldn't do it. So I had to keep handicapping the race. What a headache this race is.
Oh, yeah.
What a headache. So I just said, I just forced myself to look for somewhat of a price.
Okay.
I'm going by running, the company he's been keeping. And granted, he has not been running well with that company. He ran a decent second to Instant Coffee, which notably was at Churchill. So the two things I think this horse has going for him. Three, actually. I don't think he's as bad as he looks on paper. He likes Churchill. And, Kings Barnes, Disarm, Jace's Road, Angel of Empire. If you look at his last two running lines, every horse in the top three is in the race, the big race on Saturday. So I'm hoping short cut back, as you said. I'm hoping they get a little more aggressive with them. And I'm looking for someone. I don't want anyone at 3-1 in this race. I'll use them in my horizontals, but sure. I think this horse has a puncher's chance at, 8, 10, 12-1.
Hey, Paul, I hate to tell you, my dad will be on that horse because he bets anything with Jack in the name. So that's probably taking you the other way. That's probably the kibosh. I hate to tell you. So Pop,
the pool Saturday. Pop. The pool Saturday could absorb his money, Pete.
That's true. That's true.
Well, shout out to Pop Visco out there. Oh, maybe he's watching. So good luck to your father with that bet. Guys, to me, first of all, I think there's a lot of speed in this race. Secondly, the Pate Mile, I'm usually looking for two things. I'm looking for class and a turn back. And to me, Fort Bragg fits both those. I'm not going to say this is my favorite pick of the day, but, he's faced Practical Move, who's a legitimate horse. He doesn't want to go a mile and eighth. He shipped him all the way across the country. I didn't like him in the Florida Derby. He didn't run great. I think this horse is going to be much better one turn, guys. He's been working well. He's got Rosario. He's got a nice post. I'm expecting a step forward here for Fort Bragg. I think he's a nice horse. There's no killers in this race at all. And again, for me, the turn back and the class that he's been facing takes me to Fort Bragg. Let me just very quickly give my opinion on General Jim. And this is what makes horse racing great, because I have a lot of respect for Pete Visco and his pick. But this is the great thing about this day. I don't like General Jim at all in this spot. And I'll tell you guys why. His last race, okay, Super Chow is a nice horse, but it was a small field, and Super Chow does not want to go 7. General Jim just had a perfect trip, just got to the outside in a small field. This is a much, much, much more difficult spot, in my opinion, for General Jim. He might win. He might prove me wrong, and I'll tip my cap to Pete Visco and say I was completely wrong. This is a C for me at best. I just think this is a very tough spot. I'm not sure how good he is. And that last race, I just think was completely overrated, where he really didn't beat anyone that impressive to me, and it was a very small field. Pete and Paul, any final thoughts? We'll move on to the next race.
No, I think I think this race is wide open. And I think the thing about it is nobody's that good. They're all question marks. They were all question marks. Like Fort Bragg, if you look at Yak-Teen doesn't win outside of California.
No.
I think he's 0 for 15. If the stats were right, he's 0 for 15 shipping outside of California. So when you look at that, and then you look at a horse like the One, who I know I had, that's a horse that looks talented, has great figures. It's Yak-Teen again, unfortunately. But you figure that one, he hasn't run against a ton either. Yeah,
how about bought at the Arizona November sale for $7,500? We are all horse owners. That is, and the horse won $200,000, guys. It's just crazy, isn't it? That's impressive.
It's nuts. It's fantastic for them. And he's sort of straight bred for sprinting. It is a 1-turn mile, so maybe that'll be okay. But you look at him, and I had all these horses in my. Paul, I had about 7 of them on the A line, I think, when I first went through. So
tough race.
I'm with you.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next race. There's just one great race after another in this all stakes pick 5 that ends the Derby. This race, whoa. This is one, I'm going to say this right now, guys. I've seen a lot of American turf stakes races, this 3-year-old. This is one of the best I've seen on Derby Day. This field is completely loaded, and there is a horse that we got to mention that's 30-1 in this race that why we're going to talk about this horse, at least for a short minute. I know Kyle Roscoe has interest in this horse, of course. This is the American Turf. It's race 9. Let me switch the banners. It's about 340. It's a grade 2. It's for restricted 3-year-olds on the turf, a mile and a 16th. It's a big field again of 14. Wow. With also eligibles. There's Scooby, by the way, Pete.
Yeah,
your buddy
they got to get him in,
Scooby
man.
Quando's in the AE list.
If he gets in, he wins. So you got to get him in
Of course.
there. So, yeah.
I had to mention that, Pete. Major Dude is a more line favorite. The 1. Pletcher has got what? He's got 2 in here. It's got both inside horses. Major Dude's a favorite 5-2. Paul, we're going to go to you first. You are going with one of Chad Brown, who's got he's got 1 in this race. I thought he had no. I thought he had.
No, he's got 2.
Sorry. Oh, you have 2? Why am I drawing a blank? No, he's got 1.
No, only 1. Yeah, only 1.
Carl Spackler, of course, great name. If you're a Caddyshack fan, that's who you're going with. This is a extremely talented horse, Paul.
And that's what I'm hoping. And this is kind of the opposite of what I did in the last race. I took a headache race and took a horse who's going to be bet. I think the 1's going to be over bet. He's been, working out with the Derby horses every morning. They did not, you can't enter in 2 races. So come Monday, they opted to get him off the AE list and put him in this race because they wouldn't have been able to run him. They want to run him, but he's got, his name's been out there all for the last 2 weeks. I think he's certainly got a chance, but I think he's going to be over bet. I'm hoping in what is a very, very competitive race that this 11 could be a star. I watched the replay. Obviously, it's a maiden race at Gulfstream, so let's not get carried away. But he did really explode down the lane, indicating that, for his first start off the layoff, 3rd start of his life, he could really take a step forward. He's been in Kentucky for quite a while. He's been over at Keeneland with Chad's horses over there. And, we're just going to see him just draw away from this field here. But at 1-5,
I don't care who he's facing. This is an awesome race.
Yeah. So again, I looked at a very competitive race, and I said, "There's a chance this guy could he could really be a cut above." And I'll take the lower price than I should be willing to take.
Well, in his first start, he faced Farbridge, who's in this race, and I got to tell you, the race on January 21st. I remember I was watching it at home. And I'm watching this race live, and I had a little intel with Farbridge and Carl Spackler. I'm watching this race, Pete and Paul. I'm like, this literally, and I've been handicapping and watching races for 25, 30 years. Honestly, that might have been the best maiden turf race I've ever seen. Like, you could just, no, honestly, you could tell that these were serious horses. So he really easily could be undefeated. Pete, the only thing I don't like is he was supposed to run at Keeneland, and he got the 11 or 12 hole, and Chad decided to scratch him, which I love Chad Brown. Maybe there were other reasons. He was not hurt. He was not injured. From what I understand, Chad just didn't want to deal with the outside posts on that day, but he has been off for a while, but I'm sure Chad's got him ready to go.
I mean, Chad, yeah, there are certain things you don't worry about with certain trainers, and Chad and having time off is
you don't have many though, Pete, at all.
No, I was just trying to take a little stand here, and I mean, if you can't have all the favorites, and I'm going to go with Farbridge and say maybe Farbridge is the one who turns out to be the star out of this race and beats him again, and we say, hey, hopefully. I was hoping that the 11 would take the money because of Chad Brown. Not that Pletcher's not going to take money, but that, a Chad Brown turf horse will take a little more money than a Pletcher turf horse. And I like, Rosario. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with Rosario, but
He's
I like
the 9
a horse
on the inside, everyone.
Yep. And I like a horse when Rosario has a horse that I know is going to come from the back. And again, I don't think there's a ton of speed in here, but there's enough speed to keep it interesting up front. And I think the 9 is just going to, he's explosive there. Yeah, that was an explosive run there too.
Completely ridiculous. This is just another really good horse. And, I'd be not doing my job as a host if I didn't quickly at least show the maiden breaker, because this is when they were actually facing each other. So we're not going to watch the whole race, but this is Farbridge versus Carl Spackler. Everyone at home can make their own decisions. Farbridge is the 1. Carl Spackler is the 9. This is their first race that they ran. This is the maiden race. I'm saying literally it's one of the best races I've ever seen. Carl Spackler is on the lead, and here's Farbridge closing. I mean, look at these fractions, guys, for a maiden race. I know it's Gulfstream, but I mean, look at the gap. I mean, the 3 is a decent horse too, by the way. Fort Wilderness, who was 2-1. The gap that between these horses and everyone else is absolutely insane. I mean, look at this. There's the gap to third. I mean, wow. So very impressive race. I'm going with Farbridge also. I don't know do you guys have any intel? Because I don't. The switch to Pletcher. I did not want to talk to Christoph or Miguel Clement about this. I'm not saying it's a bad story or it's, something nefarious or ugly, but I'm sure they'd like to own, to train the horse. So I don't know what's going on there. Do you guys know anything?
I think Calumet was the listed owner last time.
Yeah, if you look in the note there, it says that, right? Calumet was, so maybe it was just a sale and they switched. Maybe it was a sale and they switched. I don't know.
It looks like a private sale.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I'd love to know what they paid for this horse. I mean, it's got to be high 6 digits. I mean,
by the way, I know we always mention this. Both the 2 and the 11 ran both their races on Lasix, and now they're not. So again, I don't know if that'll matter one way or the other, but we like to point it out so we don't forget.
Talk of the Nation is not going to be 10-1. This is whatever. No one wants to hear about morning lines.
That was quite the Twitter discussion today. I saw a nice little Twitter thread about that one too. Or
Pete, you've got him second. I've got him third. Paul, you've got him second. Either one, I'll let you guys talk very quickly about Talk of the Nation, then we'll move on. Either one of you guys.
I mean, I just thought I like when, we always talk about, we like when a horse does something that causes them to move forward. And you see when this horse got on the turf, it just, you're talking 62, 66 buyers on the dirt, and then you jump to 85, 92 and does it impressively. And in that last race, he broke poorly a little bit, was wide. And then another one that if you watch that race just sort of exploded in the lane. So there's a ton of talent there as well. Sorry, Paul, I don't know if you had anything.
Paul, before you jump in, this is the great people in the chat. LSU Stables bought a bunch of horses last year and gave them to Pletcher. There you go. Thank Matt Jamira. I wasn't suggesting there was something ugly behind the scenes, but I'm sure the Clements are disappointed losing that horse. Paul, any final thoughts on Talk of the Nation or anyone else? Charles B thinks it's possible that Fantastic again wires the field. There is a decent amount of speed. You got Johannes from California, who should show some speed. Behind enemy lines might show a little bit of speed. Mustache is definitely going. There's Otago, by the way, guys, for Kelsey Danner, who won today on a horse that beat me out of a huge play with Papilio. So I have a ton of respect for Kelsey Danner. This is a very difficult spot. But this horse is owned by Crownsway, and everyone, just full disclosure, everyone on this screen, we all own some horses with Crownsway. All I can tell you about Otago is he is training unbelievably. He's really training well. This is an extremely difficult spot, but all three of us wish the best for Otago and their connections. That'd be a fantastic story.
Get a little bit of rain. Get a little bit of rain, a little softness in the ground. That one seems Otago seems to like that.
There's Fantastic again. I think there's a lot of speed in this race, Paul. I think someone's going to set up for a closer, personally.
Yeah, I just think that Talk of the Nation, obviously $75,000 listed stakes at Tampa is not scaring anyone. But, as Pete points out, good buyer jump. It's Shug. Camacho's great at Tampa, but no disrespect. You're getting Tyler Gaffleone on him, who fairly owns Churchill. I think in a race that, if you are going to have a price anywhere, I think he's the logical price to be a part of it.
I think so, but I think the 2 and 11 are take the bulk of the money. But I think Talk of the Nation will be solid third choice. 5 to 1.
No, because the one's going to definitely take a bunch of money too. So it's definitely going to be no better than the fourth choice, I would imagine, right?
By the way, Pete, I totally agree with you.
The one will take money.
Major Dude can win, but I don't think he's going to win. He's going to be way over bet. I totally agree with you on that, Paul. I just want to mention that. And Pete's got Major Dude third, so I'm fascinated to see what the odds look like. Let's go on to one of the big races. I mean, there's so many big races, but this is the Cody's Wish race, and I'll tell you what, guys. Just seeing Cody's Wish's name in the and horse in the PPs and the entries just warms the coddles of my heart. It's just such a wonderful thing to see. There's our picks on the bottom of the screen, and hey, we're not messing around, guys. We're all going with the champ, Cody's Wish. we've got very similar. We're all 7-10 actually. Also, there is a horse, guys, on the rail that we have to talk about because I like to think that we don't just handicap on this show. We talk a lot about newsworthy items. We talk a lot of this podcast is not just about handicapping. We talk about a lot of things in this show. So, guys, we do have to mention the one, and maybe you guys know why I'm bringing that up a little bit. But let's talk about Cody's Wish. Here's the field right here. There we go. It's the Churchill Downs Stakes. It's a grade 1. $750,000 is the purse. You see, it's only a field. That's not only. It's a field of 11. Cody's Wish is 4 to 5 morning line. Mott and Alvarado. Paul, I'm going to let you do the bulk of the talking because maybe you have some intel from Mott or the connections. I'm not sure. He is clearly the horse to beat. He towers over the field by the numbers, but there is one but. He is coming off a layoff. Other than that, he looks very tough in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gambling, and our friend Matt put it in the chat, ironically, the 10 is a half brother to Cody's Wish in this race.
Endorsed.
both out of Dan's card.
Yeah.
In all honesty, if you're gambling and you want to beat a heavy favorite, you're supposed to try to beat him just because of the layoff. However, a couple of things, and I mentioned this a lot. Mott is on my short list of guys that I pay no mind to the layoff whatsoever. Okay. The horse put up a few workouts at Payson Park on what, as you know, Howard, we were talking to Johnny Burke, the aforementioned Johnny Burke, who the Dormans mentioned, who you met when I talked to him over on Rice Road. He put up some pretty good times at Payson Park. Physically, and I haven't seen him in person. I'll see him tomorrow, hopefully. Physically, he looks absolutely phenomenal. And he's a horse for course. He's 4 for 4 at Churchill. I think if you were going to beat him, the time to beat him was in the 2-turn dirt mile last year, which Cyberknife almost did.
That's what I thought. I had Cyberknife, Paul, I'm going to admit. And, Paul, can you talk about the top of the screen? These are Bill Mott's stats, 3 to 6 month layoff. He's 20% on the win end, 47% in the money with an average payout of 806 still. So, like you said, he's very solid off the layoff.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I forget who it was, but one of the many people I've talked to in writing about this story is, when Mott is allowed to have a plan and execute it, things go pretty well. And the plan pretty much was this was going to be the first race back this year. And, he got 2 days to get there, but he gets there. And then, fortunately, the plan calls for him to go to New York for the Met Mile, which would allow me the opportunity to see him again. So, look, if you're gambling, you're supposed to take a shot and use other folks to try to beat him.
Yeah.
But with the races we just talked about, if you're playing a caveman, now you might want to lean. But we all picked the 10 second. Matt Miller likes the 10. The 10 has won 3 races in a row. 0 for 6 at Churchill, a factor, but the 10 is going to probably take a decent amount of money in this race.
Yeah, I think so. I want to get to some quick comments here, and then Pete, you can talk about the 10 and the 6 if you'd like also. I think it's a little bit interesting in this race. Matt Miller mentioned to be careful. And by the way, there's 2 different Matt Millers in the chat, Paul. So this is BC champ Matt Miller. That other gentleman is not the same person, I don't believe. So, but anyway, be careful to everyone playing multi-race bets. This horse will probably be 1 to 5 in this leg. If you love him, I would avoid these bets and play different ones. If you don't, make sure you spread enough. This is coming from a guy who's one of the best contest players in the world. So Matt Miller, I think that's an excellent point to make. It's basically a glorified pick 4 if you like this horse. Pete, I've liked Endorse. We've talked about him on the show. He's come through for me, but he's a little bit quirky, right, Pete? Like Gaffleon or Size, you've got to ask this horse, quite a bit. It reminds me a little bit of Tapit Trice in that way. Is 7 furlongs too short? That's my only concern, but I love the post, and I really think the source is interesting. I don't know about the 7. I almost prefer him in a mile. Maybe I'm nitpicking.
Well, no, but I mean, he's 1 for 6 at the distance, and his only win, which was 3 back, was in an optional claimer 62. So he sort of, you expect him to beat that field. So that's maybe not as surprising. But I mean, it's hard to just ignore a horse who's in such good form. And actually, you really like to see a horse who sort of, I mean, he's breaking buyer tops. They weren't all buyer tops, but he's improving at 7, which is fantastic. So you love to see that in a horse that's still running, still getting better. There's real no knocks. Like you said, maybe he likes a mile a little bit more. Maybe that's his best distance. So when you're going up against a horse like Cody's Wish, you really need to be on the top of your game. And maybe he's on like an A- level instead of an A level or an A+ level. I mean, the rest of the field is just kind of light though. So I think between these two, I think they lay over especially from a winning standpoint.
Hola to Carlos Adrovet from Puerto Rico. Hola, ¿qué tal? Carlos, thanks for joining the show. Let's get some more Latin American viewers joining the show. We've got Siggy Mendoza, and we got a bunch of others. So, Carlos, don't be a stranger, man. Thank you for joining the show. Very quickly, let's talk about 2 horses, guys. Then we're going to move on. The 6. Tejano Twist is a nice horse. I don't know. Again, Pete and Paul, we've talked about this a lot as a handicapping angle. Just because it's an extra furlong, Paul, does not necessarily mean it's going to be better for Tejano's Twist. We're going to see, but he's a very honest horse, but he does need some pace to run into. And I'm not sure 7 is his distance, but he's as honest as they come.
Yeah, I took a look at that. 7 is kind of a little bit of a specialist distance. I mean, you do have to you do have to take note of that 101 buyer in the Whitmore down at Oaklawn, where he had this horse had a very good winter at Oaklawn with 4 starts and 2 wins, a second and a third. Lost to Gunite, who's a real horse. Lost to Skelly, who's a real horse. So, I would say that this horse is in the conversation. Again, you got to. There's 2 ways to look at the race. Spread and try to beat the big guy, or focus on him and try to get prices somewhere else.
Paul, as the if people don't know, Paul wears many hats, but his main job is public relations. So, Paul, you're the perfect person to ask this question. I don't want to get us in trouble. I want to be very careful with our words here, but Paul, I'm going to let you do most of the talking. There's been issues at Churchill this week, and just to ignore it and say it's not happening or just blow by it, I don't think is being respectful to the game or this podcast. Safi Joseph, who trains White Barrio, has had 2 horses that have been euthanized this week. I don't know what's going on. I am clearly not saying that there's something nefarious. We don't know, but it's strange. It's weird. It's very unfortunate. And I had White Barrio in second. He's not on my ticket right now. And maybe I'm overreacting to something that I don't know about. But, Paul, it's really not good what's going on. And there's going to be an investigation. That's all I'm going to say. Your thoughts, Paul, overall with White Barrio in this race. And then if you want to comment on the situation at Churchill this week, feel free.
Well, as a matter of fact, Howard, we'll get it right from them. Churchill put out a statement at 2:43 this afternoon.
Darren Rogers,
I won't read all.
Darren Rogers, the media relations director, who, by the way, is also responsible partially for allowing us to be there at the Derby, which has nothing to do with me.
Nothing, right?
Not being zero at all. But go ahead, Paul. Why don't you, if you want to read part of the statement?
It's interesting. So there's a lot going on here. So Safi Joseph has had 2 horses die suddenly, and there is no cause yet. They're doing necropsies. Parents' Pride on Saturday, which was opening night, I believe, and Chasing Ivy just on Tuesday. So you have the 2 Safis. Then, of course, we had another real sad story last Thursday. Wild on Ice, who was going to be the Derby horse for the jockey Ken Toll, a 60-year-old jockey, he suffered an injury in training, and they took him over to Root & Riddle in Lexington, possibly one of the greatest veterinary hospitals in the world. And unfortunately, he could not be saved. The 4th fatality, sadly, was a horse called Take Charge Brianna. That was in a turf race on Tuesday. So that's a whole other, so It's
D-Wayne
not like you
Lucas,
had
correct, Paul? That's D-Wayne. I bet her before.
Yes.
I bet her at Oakland. We've talked about her in the show. I think that
Yeah,
was
it
D-Wayne.
sounds like a Willis Horton horse, and Willis Horton moved most of its horses from Dallas Stewart to Wayne Lucas. So it's not like, look, it's 4 horses who've died, which is horrific. But if you're trying to pinpoint it as far as people or circumstance, you have 2 who died suddenly with no explanation until they do the equine version of the autopsy. Wild on Ice, who finished his training and just came back came back injured, and then another one on turf. So, the timing is horrible. It's never a good time to have 4 horses go down. Derby week, it's gonna feel. Look, folks, these are 1,300-pound animals. Just take a look at their legs in relation to the rest of their bodies. Okay, they are freaks of nature. They're little spindly legs, relatively speaking. So, they're really, as far as the Saffie Joseph thing, Howard, look at, the reason I'm not using White Barrio is another candidate for Pete Visco's stats of the day. This horse in Florida, 6 starts, 5 wins, no seconds, no thirds. Outside of Florida, 6 starts, no wins, 1 second, 2 thirds. So, regardless of what may or may not be going on elsewhere, I learned my lesson. We talked about that, a Saffie horse at Keeneland I liked a few weeks ago. So, as far as him, look, that's for the governing bodies to see if there's anything nefarious going on there. But as far as these 4 horses, until we get a cause of death on Saffie's 2, it's not like we got 4 leg injuries on dirt within a week. 2 unexplained, 1 on dirt, 1 on turf. So it is sickeningly sad, though, because you just hate to see these athletes go down.
And when they're not all leg injuries, 2 of them, I think, they look as though they might be heart attacks. They're not leg injuries.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's not as if we had 4 leg injuries, right?
Do you want to dip your toe into this dangerous water, or should we just move on?
No, I was going to say, from a purely handicapping standpoint, I agree with Paul. I don't like to speculate about things I don't know enough about. Saffie 0 for 22 in graded stakes races in Kentucky. So that and the fact that White Barrio never wins outside of Gulfstream is enough for me. Because I was with you. I think on paper, if you don't look at that, White Barrio looks to be coming into his own a bit. I think he likes the shorter distances. So from a racing standpoint, for a horse who I think we've all liked a little bit in the past, you're like, let's let this horse doing what he does best. But he seems to do it best in Florida, where Saffie seems to be a little bit more comfortable for whatever reason.
I'll tell you, he ran horribly in the Pennsylvania Derby, which I was at. He ran horrifically. He went to the lead and just hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
So,
all right, guys, let's move on to the penultimate race of the Pick 5. It's the traditional race before the Kentucky Derby. And then in approximately 8 minutes or so, when we're done handicapping this race, we have the wonderful Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse to help us get through the Kentucky Derby. Race 11, it's the Old Forester Bourbon Turf Classic. It's a grade 1, of course. $1 million is the purse. It's for older males. They're going 1 1/8 on turf. It's always a nice field. It's a big field. I wouldn't say this year's field is one of the best fields we've seen. I would say it's more below average compared to, there's just no superstars. We just don't have any, bricks and mortars or any just monsters in this race, but it's a very competitive race, which from a betting perspective, guys, makes it interesting and difficult. It's a 10-horse field. The morning line favors the number 7, Hong Kong Harry, coming in from the West Coast for D'Amato and Pratt. Pete, we're going to have you go first. You're going to go with the 5, Up the Mark, an up-and-comer for Pletcher, who's got 2 in the race. He's 4-1 morning line for IRAD. And, of course, Pletcher, as I mentioned, last time ran at Keeneland in a very tough Maker's Mark mile. And I thought actually ran sneaky good in this race, finishing 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, you probably weren't beating. Yeah, if you're going to finish behind Modern Games and Shea Pierre, who looks like could be a monster this year as well, you're not really losing anything by losing to those.
He's right here, Pete. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just think that race was the expectation to win that race, I think, wasn't there. So not necessarily a disappointing performance. This is another one like we talked about in the prior race, or one of the earlier races where we said, what's the cause for a horse sort of moving forward so much? They put this horse on the turf, which when you look at the breeding, makes some sense. You put this horse on the turf, immediately improves, at lower levels, wins like you're supposed to, coming from off the pace. So it's not always as spectacular, but just monster closing, jumps straight up into a grade 1 from an optional claiming, an allowance race, straight into a grade 1, pops a lifetime buyer top. Like we said, loses to two high quality horses.
Oh, for sure.
Pletcher, Irad, 40% wins, 69% in the money, graded stakes on turf. When you pair those two up, it's even a little bit better, I think, when it's a Rapoli horse. So I think this one's on the, again, sometimes we're looking for ones on the upswing, and I think this could be one of them. And
that was modern games, by the way, Pete, that he was trying to go by. And so,
try doing that. That's not the easiest thing in the world.
Paul, you got up to the mark also. Is there anything you want to add about this horse?
No, just that last race, Howard, which was the day, the Friday of the weekend, you and I were there. So I was there. And, if you looked at modern games in the paddock, you knew why he was, forget the running lines, if you want to talk about a beauty contest, but you do not see a lot of races where a 2 to 5 shot, there was not 1 second in that race that Modern Games was going to win. I mean, he was just, whatever, for layoff, Appleby doesn't usually start him this early, but as Pete brought up, Shea Pierre could be a real monster is my point. And this guy was closing right along with Modern. Modern Games was making up some ground, was never going to win, but had to really work even to run second. And this guy was coming pretty good. And I like the fact that Irad stays. 2 wins, as Pete points out, 2 wins going into that race. And, that's, if you want to talk about not a bad loss, that's a very acceptable loss. And he gets, he's going to get another 1/8 of a mile today, Saturday, which can only help him.
Yeah, I like that as well, by the way, too. I forgot to mention that.
Guys, I had a very tough time with this race, and I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying. I've got up to the mark as a B. I had 2 concerns, though. Number one, this is a very quick turnaround. Now, listen, Pletcher is one of the best out there, Rapoli. They're not going to send this horse into this race if this horse is not feeling good and ready. That being said, this is a quick turnaround, number one. Number 2, the 1.125 miles, we don't know about that, and he's going to be bet. So, again, he could definitely win. He's super talented. I have a few questions with this horse. We'll have to see. I think this is going to tell me a lot on how good this horse is. Another horse that I have a question about that I have in 3rd is Hong Kong Harry. For some of the same reasons, guys, he's been racing in California. He's a really nice horse, and he's got a wicked turn of foot. But first time in the Midwest on this kind of surface, and the 1.8 miles to me, I'm not sure he's best at that. So you guys have him, 2nd, 3rd. I've got him 3rd. Real quick, either one of you on Hong Kong Harry. I have some concerns, but he can win. I feel the same way about the 7 as I do the 5.
Paul, you want to take that one?
Well, yeah, I think the argument for the 7 is, and I have it in my notes written on my little screen here. I think he is going to get a pace to close into. You could see his good races. He does like to come from behind. He flattened out last time in the Kilroe Mile. I'm not sure what happened there, if maybe he went too early or it was whatever. But I do think he is going to get the proper setup. I was kind of looking to be against this horse, but that's why I'm keeping him in there. I think the race there's going to be a pretty good pace. And Pletcher on 8 to 30 days is 22%, FYI.
I'm guessing a lot of those were dirt starts. I don't know if you can. If you can sift through that, Paul. I'd love to know. I bet those are not turf horses, but that's
why fair. Why else am I here, Howard?
Okay. Well, I can think of some reasons, but anyway, guys.
Turf.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
8 to 30.
What is it?
20. Yeah, you're right. It went up to 23% on turf.
Got even better.
Did it really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was wrong.
Do we really need to be questioning our guy TAP this particular weekend, Howard? Is that what we're here for?
Probably not. The horse
Okay,
can win.
good.
Can I talk about my buddy Santine here? I have anyone who's
Oh, yeah,
followed
the
show-
Arlington Million, because he won the Arlington Million.
Yeah,
You got to
talk
pick
about
him.
a
No,
You know.
actually-
talk about a horse you should have questions about.
I don't even want to talk about the Arlington Million. I want to go back to February 19th of 2022. I loved. You guys, I remember it so well. I don't know if you remember that show, and because I loved this horse, and Santine was like, remember he was like 12-1 morning line, and he went off as the favorite. I'm like, what the hell? But anyway, this has been a favorite of mine for a long time, and no, not because he won the Arlington Million, which shouldn't be named that, but don't get me started. Last time in his comeback race, guys, first of all, the distance suits him great, number one. Number two, that last race was just a means to an end. He broke horribly. That's like a toss-out race to me. Forget it. He loves this Churchill. He loves the distance. I have a ton of respect for Brendan Walsh. You know how people look at the last line and say, he definitely tailed off at the end of last year. I can't deny that. But, guys, that was going a mile and a mile 16th. He wants to look at his numbers when he goes longer. He wants longer. He's second off the layoff. I think he's ready to run, and I think I might actually get a price. I really like Santine in this spot. He's one of my best plays of the entire weekend. He's got a serious challenge on his hand, but if he runs to his race, Paul, I think he's really good. Spooky Channel, we're going to move along here. Also ran huge last time. I didn't like him. He proved me wrong. This is another real honest horse who wants distance. To me, guys, as we close out talking about this race, Wolfie's Dynagos is in this race. There's a lot of nice horses. To me, it's a question of, do you like the younger horses who are more like Mile 16th, or do you like the horses a little bit older who are more proven at the distance? I think, Pete, that's really what you got to ask yourself, and you can go either way. I'm going with the second, the latter of what I said. You guys are going with the former.
Yeah, it's funny. Matt Shimura, I don't know if it's correct. I assume it is, or else he wouldn't have said it. He said this race is historically kind to 4-year-olds, last 4 or 5 years, won by a 4-year-old. And I think the reason, if I would look at it, it would be, horses take a really big step up sometimes from 3 to 4. So if you have some talent at 3, and then you move up to 4, and you start blossoming a little bit more. And then some of the older horses, they are who they are, so they sort of level out a bit. So I think that's why maybe you lean on the 4-year-olds. But I mean, it's like Santine I have as a sort of a B right below. So there's a bunch of horses in here. Wolfie's Dynagos I like a little bit more. I was hoping he would take money because he looked impressive last time, but I just like him more on the synth than on the turf. I think he's just much better.
Okay, it's gonna be a great race, and they have a good a lot of betting wagers with that race. You can bet like the 3-year-old race the day before. And anyway, there's a lot of 2-day bets and a lot of things going on at that race. Guys, it's about that time. It is time to talk about the 149th running of the Kentucky Derby. And of course, you guys know what I have to do before we bring on Jim Miller. There it is. The call post. They are on the track for the 149th Kentucky Derby, and let's bring on our wonderful friend from a Hawthorne racehorse to help us navigate this 20-horse field, Mr. Jim Miller. Jim, it's Kentucky Derby week, man. How you feeling tonight?
I'm doing good. I love the race. I love the card. Very excited. So this should be a lot of fun. This is a really good, fun field this year, and I think it's going to provide a lot of value too.
I'll tell you
Jim.
what, I had a tough time with this race. I mean, we've been talking about these horses forever, Jim, but this is a tricky Kentucky Derby, I think, for sure. Let's just jump right in, guys. Here's the field. By the way, you're wondering where are the picks on the bottom of the screen? Oh, no. I've got individual banners just for our picks for the Kentucky Derby, which we'll give them at the very end, guys. We're just going to talk a little bit in general about the race, and then we'll give our picks one at a time at the end. I'll let you know who's going first, second, third, fourth. Here is the field for courtesy of Horse Racing Nation, with the odds and the jockeys for the 149th running of the Kentucky Derby. The morning line favorite is the number 15, Forte. Irad Ortiz, 3-1, has done absolutely nothing wrong in his career. Will most likely be the favorite, especially if Mattress Mac has anything to say about it. We'll have to see. Second choice is the number 5, Tapit Trace, for Louis Saez and Todd Pletcher. Most people, if you watch this podcast, you know the kind of interest that myself, Paul Halloran, great viewers like Matt Miller, Jim Pillar's. I'm sure many others have future bets on this horse. So we know that our heart is definitely with Tapit Trice. Is our head with Tapit Trice? That's the key. Jim Miller, I'm going to let you go first. Again, don't give out your final picks yet. We're going to do that more at the end. Your overall thoughts on the Kentucky Derby, the post, who got the bad and the good parts of the draw, and what you're looking at from a pace perspective here.
Well, first off, from the draw, I actually liked the way the draw unfolded pretty much for everyone, because there was no one I felt was really hurt by the inside. Nobody I felt was really hurt by the outside. I did feel that a lot of the pace kind of was on the inner half of the field, and that's okay. A lot of the horses are going to try to clear from the inside, but it's not like you have that lone speed horse that's stuck out and say post number 18, 19 that just has to go. I mean, these horses have to work position, but I think a lot of the pace horses like Verifying and that get in the inside. So I do think the pace will be honest up front early on. Now, when you talk about betting a race and that, I won't give my picks yet, but it is a field of 20. So you have to look for some value. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't going to use Forte anywhere. And it's for two reasons. One, 3-1 in a field of 20, so much can happen. One reason to stay away. Two, the races to me have kind of been a little bit of a regression over the course of the last three races instead of a progression. So because of that, even with the regression, it puts a horse like Forte in the mix, but you're going from a huge race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to a race in the Fountain of Youth, which was pretty good, to a race in the Florida Derby that I thought he should have won by 4 and won it rather easily. Instead, he was kind of all out to win by a length. So I'm going to stay away from Forte personally in this race. I think there's a lot of other horses that are in with the shot. But to me, the one other thing I want to mention before passing it on, remember last year, guys, everybody talked about Rich Strike, 85-1. I should have thrown a few bucks on that longest price on the board. So what's going to happen is all these 50-1 shots this year that should be 100, 125, 130-1 are probably going to be 50 or 60-1 because so many people are going to pile on from that in the past. I personally, guys, when I'm looking at this race, I think this is a race that's all about those kind of middle of the road odds horses, the 8-1s to 15-1s, because your value is going to be there. And I think that's actually where your best races are going to come from, that grouping of horses.
Well, Jeff Amster says Jim has to be loyal to Larry Ravelli, right?
Yeah.
We'll find out here in just a few minutes. Two Phils is the 3 horse.
I have great nuggets on that horse, too.
Going off of memory. We'll talk about Two Phils at the end and your thoughts on him. Paul, let's go to you next. We've talked about these horses. We've talked about this race ad nauseum. We'll give our picks at the end. Your general thoughts and seeing the vibe that since you've been down there, what you're going to be watching tomorrow morning, what you're going to be looking out for maybe in the first quarter mile, and how the horses break.
Well, I will say we talked the other night, and I was not high on the Japanese horse, Dermasoda. Well, I mean, the one Japanese horse who has a chance. The other horse should be scratched so Dale Romans can get into the race.
Wow.
I was not very high on Dermasoda Gake. He worked the other day, and he was bucking his head around a little bit. When he straightened out in the lane, I will have to say he looked pretty good coming down the lane once he got it. Now, it just seems, and they have the horse out on the track for about 2 hours every day, but it seems that he especially is really keyed up. And now throw in the walkover in front of 150,000, and everyone says, well, Lemaire's not going to make the mistake he made last year. But I don't know that it's going to be possible not to have this horse go and maybe or likely go too fast. I agree with Jim. I think a lot of the speed is on the inside, but I think this guy is definitely going to be sent from out there. And Jace's Road, the only way he can win the race is on the lead. So the West Point people in the Alba should have no problem with them sending that horse. And if he ends up setting it up for another Cox or someone else, he can't win the race without being on the lead. So I think there is going to be a pretty good pace in the race, and the faster, the better.
Well, Pete, I know this might sound stupid, but I do believe with this. Sometimes these connections want to hear their horse name called like in the front of the Derby. I really believe if they don't think a horse has a chance, you're telling me West Point wouldn't love to hear Jace's Road takes the lead. I mean, again, I know that seems silly, but that's his only chance to win. And Jim, you astutely mentioned speed on the inside. Pete, there's definitely speed on the outside. I agree with Paul. I mean, Rocket Can is a horse I've talked about in the show a decent amount. For one reason, Jim Miller, he's got blinkers on. I think Junior is going. I think there's more speed in this race than people have figured, Pete. I'll let you talk about, Pete, your thoughts in general on the pace flow, etc. But I really believe, I'm not saying it's going to be 45 like last year. I see like a 22-4 and like 46-2. I think it's going to be legitimate.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, just by nature, it tends to be a little bit faster than people give it credit for because you have to work so hard to get position. So sometimes you have to gun if you're on the outside and you have a horse that can't be in the back. And we're talking Jace's Road. Dermasotogake, I think, is a little more tactical, but I think I agree with Paul, will probably go. Rocket Can, you don't put blinkers on necessarily unless you plan on going. And I assume they didn't plan on getting the 18 hole, but that's just an unlucky choice. But I think they're going to probably go. And like Jim was mentioning, there is speed on the inside, but even when you're on the inside, you still have to go a bit to make sure that you don't get crushed by that rush coming over.
Verifying has to go now, Pete, right? Like verifying has to go.
Yeah, and Jim, the one thing I disagreed a little bit with Jim was I thought a couple horses, verifying, was hurt a little bit because just from the 2-hole, if for some reason he doesn't break sharp, it almost takes him out of the race if he can't just get to the front. So I think just circumstance, because the Derby's wild, could hurt a couple of those horses. But no, I'm looking for pace. And when we get to my picks, I'm with Paul. Let's go 21 and 44 for all I would hope for. Let's bring Crown Pride and whoever the other horse was. Let's bring them back and let them run out to the front with the horses I like.
Jim, Confidence Game has, the 4. By the early time form, Jim Miller, Confidence Game is quick, has never been beyond a mile 16th, has been working really well. He's fresh. He's got to go a little bit also, right? It just feels like there's more speed in the race than people have been leading on.
Oh, there's definitely more speed in the race. And you talk about, I mean, look at Rocket Can, like you mentioned, you're making an equipment change in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it's Bill Mott doing it, so it's something that you really can't question too much. But when you have things like that happens. Here's the thing, though, guys. Even look back to last year. Yes, Rich Strike came charging at him late. There were 5-6 horses going out there, but there always seems to be one of those horses that still kind of seems to run on. It's a matter of which one it is. But I do think the pace is going to be honest up front early on, too. So I'm kind of staying away from those front-running horses as well.
Yeah, listen, it's going to be a great race. We've talked about it for a long time, and tomorrow, by the way, for everyone, before we're going to go to our picks right now. Everyone's like, Howard, let's just get to the picks. Tomorrow, we have a Kentucky Derby roundtable. It starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Everyone as part of the HHH Racing podcast, including Matt Miller, will be there. And we're going to talk more interesting questions about this race, like who's going to have the lead at the first quarter? Who's going to have the lead at the top of the stretch? Will Pletcher win the race? So more interesting tidbits. It'll be fascinating. And Matt Miller is going to be here also to talk about some of the betting possibilities. Guys, let's just go right to it, to our picks. Each person can speak for a few minutes about their picks and their opinions. We're going to go with Pete Visco first.
Oh,
Pete's
excellent.
top. We're going to go to our top 4 here. Pete's top 4 in the Kentucky Derby on the screen. It's not going to be scrolling. It's a banner. There we go. Pete is going 14, 15, 17, 5. He is going, let's see if I have these numbers memorized. He's going to go Angel of Empire, Forte, Dermasotogake, and Tapit Trace. Pete, the floor is yours. Angel of Empire has been a very popular pick, I've heard from very smart people the last few days. There's no way. I think he's going to be potentially 5-6 to 1 in this race. Wouldn't surprise me. I'll go and bring up the PPs. What do you like about him, Pete?
Well, as we talked about on whatever show that was this week, they're all blending together. I think on Monday, I like this horse mostly because he's one of the ones in the race who's still definitely improving, but he's improving and winning. So he's actually improving. He's winning the races. He's not like some of the others who are improving, but they're still running, second and third. This one in the Arkansas Derby, I just love the way he sort of closed hard, ran through the wire. Like he was extending. He wasn't slowing down. I feel like the mile and a quarter should be no trouble. And the one thing I do like about him as well is I don't think of him as sort of a deep closer, even though he does come from pretty far back sometimes. I think of him as one, we always used to talk in the Derby. You want to be in like that top flight when you hit the lane. You want to be close. You want to be in like second, third, fourth, fifth. You want to be close and right on those leaders. And I think he has that middle move, like right coming to the turn. I shouldn't say middle because in the Derby, it's way past that. But he has that move there where I think he can get himself into contention. Pratt will get him there. And then when he gets that closing kick going, I think he can at least run down many of the other horses. And he's tactical enough to where I think he can get in position to maybe hold off the other closers.
We're not going to get to a lot of the comments in the chat, but please continue to chat to each other with live comments, because I want to get the opinions of these guys. I think this horse is very live, very logical. Had the lead about the mile marker, Pete. So you can't transfer one race to another, but if you were to superimpose, Paul Halloran, superimpose how about that? Listen, I'm an educator. I can these multisyllabic words I can handle. If you take the Arkansas Derby race on top of like Churchill's track, Angel of Empire takes the lead to the top of the stretch. So I don't think it's going to work out that way on Saturday. But anyway, he doesn't have to be too far back. To Pete's point.
Real quick, Howard, Matt asked the question, what win odds are your minimum? It's funny. My wife at dinner got pissed at me because she asked me who I was going to say was going to win. And I said, in some derbies, I don't care about the winner because I don't necessarily make a win bet. I make a win bet if I love a horse. And there's probably been 5 or 6 of the last 10 to 15 years that I've loved and made big win bets on. This year might be the same. Now, if Angel of Empire stays and he's, 8, 10, 12 to 1, maybe I'd put a win bet on him. But this is a year for me where I'm not looking for the winner necessarily. I know we're supposed to tout winners, and that's what we do because we're on camera and we're on Twitter and all that crap. But from a where I'm putting my money, I don't care about a win bet in a race like this. I'd rather stick with a couple horses. I love Forte. So I want Forte to win just to shut up most of Twitter because they keep dogging him. No offense, Jim. I know you were a little down on him, but I know you don't do it maliciously. You do it smartly, but I love Forte, and I'd love to just see him run by most of these horses and just crush them just to shut some people up. But I'm not betting Forte to win because there's no value in betting him to win.
Jimmy's right next to you, man. You can give him a little elbow. He's right there on the screen. You can, anyway.
But that's the reason, and he's right, because that's the thing. You have to look at it from 2 standpoints for a race like the Derby. It's 20 horses. Forte is a very good racehorse, but when you're betting the race, do you want 3 to 1 in a field of 20? That's a big reason why I'm going to stay away, because I actually think he might even go shorter than that. So I think he might be sitting there somewhere around 5 to 2, and to me, that's no value in a 20 horse field.
Although it's funny, if you looked at Twitter, he should be about 30, as bad as he must be. So.
Let's go to the wonderful Paul Halloran. Paul's picks. The whole world is watching right now for Paul Halloran's top 4 in the Kentucky Derby. Here they come at the bottom of the screen. Paul is going 5, 15, 14, 11. He's going Tappet Trice, Forte, Angel of Empire, and Disarm. Very interesting long shot for 4th. Paul Halloran, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, it's like when I ordered vanilla ice cream with Jimmy's, not sprinkles. Jimmy's the other night. Very, very unimaginative selections. But, again, we've talked enough about Tappet Trice on this show. I believe he's the best horse in the crop. I think he is on the improve. I think the Bluegrass was the best prep. I think Saez got a little bit of a different dynamic out of him by being forced to get him in the race, being down on the rail. Now, I don't expect him to be 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. But as I said the other night, if he could somehow find a way to be 10th, then I think the way he gets beat is he doesn't get there in time, which is obviously a possibility in a 20-horse field. I'd take Saez at this minute in time. If I had to pick one jockey to win a race with my life on the line, it would be Luis Saez. So we get that. Who had a spill yesterday, by the way, and thank God got up from it. I'm not in the anti Forte camp either. That's why my picks are unimaginative. I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think I'm not so sure, Jim. I think his odds might go the other way a little bit what Mattress Mac notwithstanding, because there's just so much talk about, well, Forte's not good value. Forte's not good value. Forte's not good value. Now all of a sudden Forte is 7-2, and you're like, oh, he's good value. Up, shut up. So anyway, and I went with my 3 A's, 1, 2, 3. And my horizontals, I have 3 A's. I have Angel of Empire as an A. And, so are they going to run 1, 2, 3? I'm sure probably not. But, I will play some verticals with some other long shots. But, if I were going to play, if this were a contest, which it's not, I would be playing, pretty big exactas with the 5 over those 2.
Paul, real quick, for people that like Tapit Trice, we talked about this on the show last night a little bit, or this week, and then Jim will get to your selections. Do you want Saez to be aggressive early in the race like he was in the Bluegrass and try to get more early position, but then potentially be more on the inside, which is saving ground, but might have more traffic? Or would you prefer Louis just lets the horse get into stride naturally and maybe be further back, but have the better opportunity to get to the outside? I think that's a huge thing that's got to be worked out for these connections.
Yeah, but I think, starting in the 5 is different from starting in the 1. And I know there's 15 horses to his right. I did the math on that. But I would kind of prefer we've talked about it. He doesn't break necessarily pulley, but he is
Correct.
Slow into stride. But the thing you've got to remember, he has the ability to naturally get into his stride. It's a quarter of a mile to the turn. Okay, it's not like if the race is a mile and an eighth, you could be talking an eighth. Look at Gulfstream. They run the race at Gulfstream. It's about 100 yards to the turn. Okay, so I mean he's got a quarter of a mile to do what he has to do and get to where I'd like him to be, which is 10th, straightening out on the backstretch. And I kind of, the more I think of it, and Jim brought it up, I kind of like the fact that the horses around him are going to go, because get him good, get him out, let him go. It's, I like that scenario better than, him being surrounded by stalkers who are going to be right next to him. He wants to run in open space. It's pretty clear. And he didn't love being down on the rail at Keeneland. That was pretty obvious, but he found a way to win, and he found a way to beat, what we think is a pretty good horse. I think Verifying, if he were in the 12 out in this race, he might be on my A line. I think he's a real racehorse. I agree, Howard. I think he got really hurt. So, yeah, I think Louis will do what's necessary. He'll have a strategy. I don't think, though, it's going to be take him back to 20th and circle everything. Now, if it is, it is, but that's a tough way to win this particular race.
Last thing I'll say, I do like the fact, Jim Miller, I want you to comment on this as we bring up your picks. I like, if you're a Tapit Trice fan, which I know you're not necessarily based on your picks, I like the fact that he's got a Pletcher just to his outside, because I'm not saying Kings Barnes is going to veer out to the right, but Todd Pletcher is telling Jose Ortiz, under no circumstances do you break out of the gate and move to the left, under any circumstances. So, Jim, I think that might help Tapit Trice just a bit. Any thoughts on that before we bring up your picks?
He's the horse that I picked 5th in the race. So it is. It's a very similar reasoning. It's the reasoning behind my selections as well, because my horse also is surrounded by a lot of speed horses. So I don't think you have to worry as much about kind of that jostling out of the gate. I think the horses are just going to kind of fall into their race a little bit, get into their position, and be able to settle into it instead of having to work to find that position. A horse like Tapit Trice probably in the same exact mode as my selection too.
Here we go. Jim Miller's official public picks on the HHH Racing Podcast. Is he going to go with the Chicago boy, or is he going somewhere else? Jim Miller is picking 2 fills with Larry Ravelli on top. He's got 3, 14, 10, 17. He's going 2 fills. Angel of Empire in second. There you go, Pete. He's got the 10, Practical Move in third. Derma Sotogake, he's a man of his word. He's tossing Forte, and as he just said, he would go Tapit Trice in 5th. Jim, the floor is yours, sir.
First thing I want to say, I hated the Derby point system this year because if it was how it was any other year, Mandarin Hero would be in the race and I probably would have used the horse. So sitting in spot number 22 and not 21 and not getting in the race scares me a little bit. All right, here's my reasoning behind Two Phils. Yes, it's the hometown horse. But regardless of it being the hometown horse, there's a couple of things. Pete made a very good point. Running style, when you hit the top of the lane, you really have to be in contact with the leader. So that checks off one box for me for Two Phils. Second, the horse has already won over the racetrack, winning the Street Sense last year. So this was a horse that didn't have to go to Churchill early to get familiar with the surroundings, get familiar with the racetrack. They've already won over the racetrack. Third, the win in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, Larry Ravelli talked about after the race. He was worried about wanting to get into the Derby like everybody else is. He came out of the race and said, hey, this horse didn't have to get used in the lane. This horse won rather easily, wasn't have to push that hard, and then put out a 101 buyer with that victory too. Now, after that, I love the fact that he kind of just stayed in the routine for Two Phils, went back to the home base for Hawthorne. You're in the stall surrounded by your buddies in the barn. You have the same groom and hot walker that you see every day, the same barn that you see every day, and a racetrack that you're very familiar with that has a very long stretch as well, too. But this is a horse that I watched these works. He had 2 works where he was sent off behind a horse by the name of Smokin' Richie, who was a very fast sprinter, and he was 4 lengths behind Smokin' Richie. He absolutely just sat there on cruise control, ran right on by this horse at the wire and was never puffing. And I was back in the barn less than 10 minutes after his most recent drill, and he was walking like he hadn't done anything, hadn't done any work at all. So there's a lot of reasons that I like the horse. Now, of course, there's the concerns. It's Jareth Loveberry's first ride in the Derby. You have to worry about that. I'm not worried about the paddock. They schooled the horse in the paddock yesterday and schooled just fine. But again, the horse has raced there before. But again, you talk about kind of these middling type of horses, probably 12 to 15 to 1 on Two Phils. I think Angel Empire will probably be second choice. I think going to be 5 or 6 to 1. I think they may actually be bet over Tapit Trice, but it'll be close. I think those 2 are close. And then you look elsewhere, Practical Move. We don't know what the California horses were. But again, I liked Mandarin Hero. Practical Move is a big, strong horse. And one of the things, he's not going to get bumped around. He's going to do the bumping. So if things get jostled around, he's the one that kind of holds his position. And then Derma Sotogake, go back and look at the Dubai World Cup card, guys. Japan horses won almost every race of that card and were absolutely dominant. And this was one of the most dominant performances on the card. So for me, yes. Hometown horse, of course, but there's a lot of reasons to back the horse. I think the trip could be very similar, maybe sitting a little bit closer to the pace than a horse like Tapit Trice is early on. But again, so much speed surrounding the horse to kind of go. I don't think they're going to have to work that hard to find their position.
I think there are very valid reasons why Two Phils can win this race. I think he's very live in this spot. And guys, Jim is not going to throw out an opinion just because he's a Chicago guy. This horse is legit. I've heard a lot of good vibes, by the way, in the last 48 hours, how he looks on the track. He's a beautiful horse. He's got a big number. And the last thing I'll say about Two Phils, and I mentioned this, Jim, this week, Churchill dirt track, very kind to horses that have raced on the Sin and the turf. I don't know if Two Phils wants like a deeper surface like a Belmont, but he might love this Churchill surface. So
yeah, he's won over it before. I'm not worried
absolutely. At all. All right, guys, let's go to my picks. I'll tell you what, this was a tough Derby. I thought long and hard about this. There are a lot of decisions that had to be made. I have to go with my head when I'm giving out public opinions. Everyone knows on this screen, I would love to see Tapit Trice wins. It'd be one of the best handicapping calls I've ever made in my lifetime. My absolute heart is with Tapit Trice, but you know what? I have to be fair to the viewers, and I have to do what I think is right. My official top 4, and boy, do I hope I am wrong. I have never wished I was more wrong than I am right now, but here's my top 4. Jim Miller, eat your heart out, buddy. I am going with Two Phils in the Kentucky Derby, and I'm going Angel of Empire second. Jim Miller, and please tell everyone we did not discuss our picks at all.
We did not. My reply to you when you said this was I thought you were going to put Tapit Trice first, second, third, and fourth. So there you go.
I'm going Two Phils, Angel of Empire, Forte, Tapit Trice. Look, we're running out of time here. I don't want to talk too long. We've talked about these horses forever. I think Two Phil's going to get a great trip. And the Jared Loveberry comment, first of all, he's a great jockey, as you know. I think it worked out okay for Sonny Leone last year. I know that was weird. They're all great jockeys in this race. I know, Paul, but listen, if anyone thinks Jared Loveberry is not capable of winning the Derby, they are crazy. Watch this guy every day. He is a fantastic rider. I think he sets a great trip, Jim, Pete, and Paul, in behind the speed. I think he's improving. I think he's going to love this track. And he's going to be a little bit of a price. I mean, if I think the chance of Two Phils is not that much worse than a Forte, why not take 3 or 4 times the price? It just makes sense. Angel of Empire, Pete, I love this horse. I think he can absolutely win. He's going to run a big race. Forte, you got to have respect for Forte. I've got him in the mix. I just don't like his price. And he doesn't lay over this field by any means at all, by any number you take a look at. And then I got to put my guy TT in there. Paul, you know.
Oh, that was nice of you. What a guy you are. What a guy.
Paul, do we need to spin this podcast off when Tapit Trice? I don't even think we should put Howard on if Tapit Trice wins the Derby next week when we do our
that would be a suspension. Pete, a one-game suspension?
That is a one-game suspension.
You know what?
Yep.
That's a good idea.
Look, if Tapit, full disclosure for everyone out there, I want to be honest to the public out there. I'm alive to $14,500 at Tapit Trice. That is, I put out my tickets out there 2 months ago. I have $200 to win on them at 60 to 1. I have 50 to win on them at 45 to 1. I'm alive to 14.5. Is it life-changing? No. Is it a big deal? Yes. Would it give me a lot of sense of pride and satisfaction? Absolutely. But if he drew from the 10 out, he'd be my top pick. I just have concerns about the inside. I love the horse. Everyone knows it. There's my.
You could tell by putting him in 4th. We can really tell how much you love him.
But Jim, you can love a horse, but not pick him in 1st. I mean, I'm not going to.
No, but you can pick him in 2nd or 3rd at least. Come on, man.
I think he's gonna run a great 4th or 5th. I think he's going to get a little bit of trouble. Come like a train. He can run a great race, Jim, and finish 4th or 5th. There's been a zillion horses in the Derby that have done this.
Yeah, I picked him 5th. I think that's the kind of trip that he might get. I mean, even Paul said it. The one concern is, does he just come up short? And that's the thing. And it's short just for lack of real estate for working out a trip when there's 20 horses. So
yeah,
see how
we gotta let you go, Jim, because Bettin Boost starts in 13 minutes. Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse. I really appreciate it, man. Good luck for your bets on Saturday. And of course, please bet Hawthorne Racecourse next week. Jim Miller will be back to talk about Hawthorne Racecourse in particular. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Yeah, guys, good luck. Jim.
See you later, man.
All right, guys, we're going to roll through. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're almost done. We're going to roll through our pick 5s very quickly. Here's Pete's pick 5 ending in the Derby. 1, 5, 9, 12. 1, 2, 4, 8. 7, 4, 5, 7. 5, 14, 15, 17. $96. You're singling Cody's Wish, Pete. Quickly talk about your thoughts here.
Yeah, I won't say too much. I'm going with the Cody's Wish single, which half the world is going to do, but that's the only logical one for me on the card. Then I'm sticking with my top. I have a top bucket of win contenders in the Derby, so I'm going to try and close it out with one of those 4.
I think you have an excellent $96 ticket. Pete Visco, good luck with your all stakes pick 5 ending the Derby. Paul Halloran, he's pick 5, 5, 9, 10, 12 with 2, 4, 8, 11. With 7, with 5, 7, 9, 10, with 5, 14, 15. Also singling Cody's Wish, $96, Paul.
Looks like Pete and I are cashing together. Look at those 2 tickets next to each other. Right? Why don't you superimpose those tickets?
Yeah, nice. Very nice.
I can't do that. I can flip flop. But anyway,
look at that. That is pretty good.
You know, I do think, and Matt Miller brings up a good point, and we do have good news for Matt Miller, Howard, because there was a little confusion in the chat today because there was an M. Miller and a Matt Miller, and he made it clear. So the good news for Matt Miller is Howard is going to take a page out of the Elon Musk playbook, and instead of paying for the blue check mark, you are going to pay for the green HHH icon, and that'll verify that you are who you are. So, Matt, it'll only cost you a few bucks a month in addition to what you're already paying, but you will get the HHH Howard Elon Musk verification.
Let me tell you something. If Tampa Trace wins this race, I'll be paying for a lot of things for a lot of people. And you guys will be benefiting also, believe me. Let's go to my pick 5. My pick 5 is 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, with 2, 11, with 7, with 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, with 3, 5, 14, 15. It's a straight $100. I'm also singling Cody's Wish. I'm just using Farbridge and Carl Spackler in the 3-year-old turf race. I'm spreading in the other ones. I do have our boy TT.
Hey, Paul, he was good enough to put. He was good enough to put him in the.
Come on.
I mean, I thought it was going to be a C. I thought it was going to be a C.
He had him as a D. Pete, he had him as a D.
I have him as a B plus. I've got him as a B plus right now. My pick 5.
I'm going to tell you, Pete. You know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, Pete? I'm going to tell Tampa Trace that. I'm going to tell him tomorrow morning.
Whisper in his ear and say, "Hey, win this one for." They should take his ticket away. They shouldn't even cash it in Vegas. This ticket.
He went from stalking. He went from stalking him at Keeneland, where the horse had to have an equine restraining order, and now he can't make his trifecta.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Look, I'm trying to move.
I got to tell you, Matt Miller will like this. Matt Miller will like your picks. He will like the fact that you're less infatuated with the horse, and you can't get near him. He'll like that.
Paul, you've refereed and coached for a long time. This is called reverse psychology. Tampa Trace, you can't win. You're going to have trouble. You're not good enough. He's like, Howard, I'm going to prove you wrong and win by 3 and 159 and 3/5 and pay 1080. That's my hope, guys.
I think by the way, I think he's going to get bet. I think he is going to get bet more than we think he's going to get bet. By the way,
we'll see. It'll be fascinating. We thank everyone for watching tonight. Again, in literally 9 minutes, please watch Bettin and Boozin. They're going over the two-day pick 6. It's $1 bet. It's a great bet. Then tomorrow night, with all the HHH Racing Podcast co-hosts and myself, Derby Roundtable to talk more about the Kentucky Derby with Matt Miller as well. For my wonderful co-hosts, Pete Visco and Paul Halloran, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 255, and what a memorable run of the HHH Racing Podcast. Smash that like button, spread the word. Good luck with the Kentucky Derby 149 this Saturday. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing Podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.